Oh, good evening. My name is Sophia Yates, and I'm in the virtual world of Second Life. Um, I come here to learn, express myself, meet people from around the world, try and understand what's going on. I create films that explore a lot of my imagination. I do a lot of things here. So, anyways, and I'd like to read something to you that has had some concern of mine for some time. I found this literature a few weeks ago, and it applies to today from what I'm seeing. This document was written in 1936, so just bear with me with what I have to read to you, okay? Um, it's about communism perverting youth. We see it today. They're trying to really, really steer our youth to the far left. We're losing our children. The college student of today is confronted by many dangers that we, of an earlier generation, escaped. From many angles, there comes to the students great and glowing preachments of new philosophies, new conception of man, and new types of government. Altogether, too many educators in our schools and colleges are inoculating the student mind with the virus of atheism and un-Americanism under the guise of liberalism and academic freedom. Deliberate lies and half-truths are presented in most alluring terms, well calculated to break down the student's morale. Deliberate lies and half-truths are presented in most alluring terms, well calculated to break down the student's moral fiber, thus rendering it easier to instill in the minds of the youth in their charge the doctrines of atheism and communism. Teaching them that love of God and country is outmoded thought, so cleverly and in such a plausible manner are these dangerous doctrines presented, that one would be justified in saying, with Holy Scripture, as to deceive even the elect. Today I would speak to you of the philosophy called communism, a term. It is a philosophy instead of a political party or an economic movement, because that is exactly what it is, a philosophy, not only of life, but of death. You could call it the religion of the godless, founded upon the doctrines taught by Karl Marx and his friend and co-worker Friedrich Engels. Communism represents today's greatest enemy of God and state. Atheistic in principle and action, the depraved doctrines of these men have wrought untold misery in the world. I shall endeavor to strip the cloak of liberalism from this menace called communism, and exhibit it as the white sepulchre it truly is. First, let us understand that the label communism is a ruse, deliberately used by socialists to lure into the fold the uninformed and unwary. The true doctrines of Marx and Engels are the vicious philosophy of socialism. Make no mistake about this. The proper understanding of this fact would have enabled many to escape contamination. When I use the term communism, you will recognize it as the socialistic creed of Marx and Engels and their disciples, who have scattered the seeds of destruction throughout Christian nations. The proof that communism is atheism is furnished first by Marx and Engels and later by the disciples, wherever they are located. Begin with the statement of Marx that religion is the opium of the people, and then that of Engels. In our evolutionary conception of the universe, there is absolutely no room for either a creator or a ruler. Consistently have their creeds been carried out by those engaged in further the cause of communism. Other proof of their atheistic principle is the fact that they work hand in hand with atheistic societies all over the world. In America, their chief allies in this work are the American Association for the Advancement of Atheism and the Freedom Seekers Society. And I'm going to put in all these other organizations that they have all these like fancy names. I'm not going to go and name a bunch of random groups, but it's very obvious what we've been seeing and witnessing today. Again, I want to remind you this was written in 1936. A quote from the communist publication Soviet Anti-Religious Propaganda. The anti-religious campaign of the Soviet must not be restricted to Russia. It must be carried on throughout the whole world. What happened in Russia? All of us are familiar with what has happened in Russia since the communists took over that unhappy land. We know how religious edifices were destroyed or turned into warehouses, clubhouses, or worse. How priests were murdered and faith-embracing Christians were either exiled or executed. How decency was driven from the land and lasciviousness substituted. Home life was destroyed, and the child became the ward of the state, and under this guardianship deprived of all knowledge of God. It naturally follows that the children of Russia, thus deprived of truth and light, followed the communist doctrine of free love and all of the forms of immorality that were being practiced by the people of Russia. So indecent has the communist government of Russia become that we know from good authority that moral crimes are not considered unlawful and no punishment is fixed for their commission. All the horrors of atheistic communism in Russia are to be found also in Mexico. We know of the persecution and exile of priests and nuns and the deliberate murders of Christ's faithful. Okay, 1936. Competent authorities have stated that the efforts made to corrupt the youth in Mexico assume diabolical forms that stagger the imagination. Under the regime of the communistic government, innocent children attending schools were guided by the teachers in performing acts of immorality. Mere babies of 7 to 9 years were forced to participate in these dreadful orgies. Nothing is left undone by these monsters to drive all concept of God from the human mind. Fear for the United States. What of the United States? Do we have any reason to fear that our country will eventually fall prey to this satanic philosophy? Yes! I answer my own question. Yes! I answer my own question, for I fear we are hastening with giant strides towards such a diabolical and why do I utter such a gloomy prophecy? Not only in the educational field has the slimy tentacles of communism reached, but it is becoming firmly entrenched in the ranks of labor, governmental policies, and even certain so-called Christian church bodies. Rank heresies engendered by communists have sprung up and have caused division in churches. On all sides, under every conceivable guise, the people of America are being taught atheistic philosophies. Growth of paganism. This is fertile ground in which to sow its seed. When we realize that approximately 70% of our population profess no religious affiliation, it is easy to understand the rapid and tremendous growth of paganism. Well organized in every field of endeavor, plentifully supplied with funds, the communists of America work 24 hours a day. Their success is alarming. To return to the sphere of education, it is not hard to understand the tremendous success the communists have enjoyed among students. Although too many teachers are either open members of the Communist Party or kindred organizations that are truly communistic in practice and intend to deceive by sailing under false colors. One particular group is the American Civil Liberties Union, ostensibly formed to protect the right of free speech. It is in reality a subsidiary of the Communist Party. This is but one of hundreds of groups organized throughout America, formed to further communism. I am unable to give you a full list because almost daily we find new ones springing up. Again, this is 1936. Through thousands of publications that have their special appeal to all ages and all conditions, our country is literally flooded with propaganda. When we realize that the American communists, together with all communistic orders throughout the world, are, by their own admissions, branches of the Soviet government of Russia, we can appreciate their strength and the reasons for their progress. What is the connection between communism and schools and educators? Professor Harry Elmer Barnes, a member of the American Civil Liberties Union, is one of the best-known writers and teachers in America today. His books and services are in great demand. His record is a long one consisting of un-American activities, coupled with a consistent effort in all his writings to deride God and promote atheism. A thumbnail sketch would be about as follows. He was a member of the American Civil Liberties Union National Committee, also a member of the Executive Committee of the ACLU. He endorsed Hapgood Professional Patriots. This book was issued in serial form by the Communist Party's daily paper, The Daily Worker. Pure communist propaganda. Organized ACLU branch at University of Wisconsin. Signed appeal for Chinese communists. Was financed by the Garland Fund to study so-called American imperialism. This is the same Garland Fund exposed by Congressman Fish as communistic. Listed as a speaker for Communist Labor Institute called United States Supreme Court Menace to American Liberty. The New York Times, in a recent issue, the New York Times, reported Barnes as addressing the Whig Clio Society, the Whig Clio Society, an undergraduate literary society of Princeton University, as follows. Barnes praised Soviet Russia's war on religion and said that Russia's crusade against Orthodox religion was against the greatest scourge to humanity. Barnes further said that the drive against religion by the Soviet was no different from the efforts of the Christians centuries ago to curb heresy. He praised the Soviet government warmly for their attack on supernatural religion. Mrs. Albert W. Dilling, author of Red Network and the recognized Red Authority, quotes Barnes as having made the following statement: "There is no such thing as sin, scientifically speaking, and hence it disappears into the limbo of outworn superstition. The Bible deserves no reverential awe." Barnes was an honorary vice president of the organization known as the Free Thinkers of America. I believe in free thought, free thinking, free speech, but I think people understand what's been happening here in our country is that our youth has been pushed so far left that they don't even have an identity. They don't even know what they are. They can't identify with anything anymore. We have people that are saying, I identify with a cat. I identify with a dog. I identify with my avatar. But the minds of our children have been distorted and just brainwashed. There is no such thing as I can't believe what I'm reading. There is no such thing as sin, scientifically speaking, and hence it disappears into the limbo of outworn superstition. The Bible deserves no reverential awe. Barnes was an honorary vice president of the organization known as the Free Thinkers of America. Was also professor of sociology at Smith College for Girls. Listen to these quotations from one of his latest books, namely The New History and Social Studies. Remember, 1936 it was written. The reasons for the phenomenal grip of the Catholic Church upon its communicants can never be wholly appreciated until one reflects that with its combination of the papacy and the morality, it provides for a unique dual transference of the filial and sexual attachments of both female and male deliverers to the Holy Father and the Holy Mother, respectively, page 249. This suggests Barnes' conversation to the Freudian theory that sex is all that matters and is the reason for all actions. Again on page 531, I don't have that big book. Christian civilization may have placed higher esteem upon the woman than paganism, but it certainly degraded women and sex in general. From his book, The Twilight of Christianity, I quote, "It is difficult to justify legal interference in those sexual relations which do not involve personal violence or fraudulent misrepresentation." He called the Bible an allegedly holy book. Yeah. Barnes defined communism as follows. Communism is the great secular religion with Marx in the place of Jehovah, Lenin in the place of Jesus, Trotsky in the place of St. Paul, and Stalin in the place of St. Peter. Can you get that one? Despite such an atheistic and subversive record, last year he was advertised as a lecturer by Temple University's Evening Extension Division of the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. During the same course, Professor Harry A. Overstreet, who has a long list of radical activities to his credit, also was advertised as a lecturer. Is it surprising to find communist activities in any school where such men come into contact with students? Don't you think it was more than a coincidence that Bertrand Russell, the English socialist and writer, was invited to lecture the students of Smith's College for Girls? Russell lectured before many student bodies, and we have every reason to believe that he was brought to America by communists. Quotations from the books written by Russell are too indecent to utter in public, but one or two examples of his mildest will give us the general tenor of the atheistic philosophy that is being taught the youth of America. So this is what his theories are. Okay, back in 1936, we thought we had problems. Today, they had problems. The youth were under attack. They were basically being brainwashed, and all of their morals were being stripped from them. Things were, it was like a free-for-all. Okay, so Russell's theories. In some of his works, which university professors laud as classics, Russell discusses what can a free man worship. Therein, this ultra-modern philosopher describes all and sundry religionists as bounden thralls and asserts that a free man, a civilized and enlightened free man, can worship nothing unless it be omnipotent matter rolling on its relentless way. According to this mentor, he infers that all one needs to do to become civilized, enlightened, and free in heart and spirit is to espouse godless materialism. Barnes, Overstreet, and Russell are an infinitesimal part of those writers and teachers whom we should condemn. The list of those engaged in atheistic and communistic work is a long, sad recital of those pagans who are endeavoring to ruin the ideals of our youth. Blasphemy in the press. One of the editorial writers connected with a communist daily newspaper called the Daily Worker is typical of the depraved exponents of communism. In the Daily Worker of recent date, we find Michael Gold uttering the vilest blasphemy conceivable. Let me quote you his exact words. "Dear God, that was a fine job some of your hired hands did down in Maryland last week, lynching a poor colored boy. Great stuff. I suppose you were around somewhere chuckling. Wait till we get the string around your own white old neck. But gosh, this letter is supposed to make one spiritual, and here I am, being bitter again. Well, sir, I see where your Hitler is doing a big business for you. You never had a better salesman than this Jew killer. By the way, what are your quotations on poison gas and bombs? The Pope admires the efficient way you are starving out the unemployed. This beats birth control, but I don't like your last batch of Matthew Walls and Ralph Elsleys. They have spoiled in transit. The smell has been ferocious. Gold, a professional atheist, communist, and an open blasphemer, recently lectured at Dartmouth College." And, let's see, in another, so-called liberal Jess Holmes, president of the American Federation of Teachers Local number 192, who is ever ready to take up the cudgels in the interest of free speech and assembly, paraphrased the Psalms as follows. "The Lord is my automobile's low gear to help me in climbing hard hills. The Lord is my antiseptic in times of dangerous epidemics. The Lord is my dynamo to charge my run-down batteries. The Lord is sunlight in my room, bringing me the health of ultraviolet rays." I could go on indefinitely quoting such cases, but each case is a repetition of the others, a history of a concerted effort to ensnare the youth of America. And why? Because the destiny of a nation rests with its youth. Whenever the socialist state exists, there we find youth regimented. The philosophy is youth for the state and not the state for the youth. In the philosophy of the socialist state, the individual man or woman belongs wholly to the state. He or she is but a cog in the wheel, a stone in the masonry. He or she has no intrinsic dignity or value, no God-given rights or destiny. In state absolutism, the child is born for the state. The mothers are mere human incubators. Knowing this, we can realize the avidity with which communism seizes on any type of doctrine that will give our youth the idea that his is a world to be viewed in a purely materialistic sense, to the exclusion of all understanding of God or good morals. Commonwealth College. I know this is long, but I'm reading. It has to be read. I come across a lot of literature, but I have a pile of books and documents that I picked up at a store, a location. Well, actually, it was an estate sale. And this woman that had passed away, she was an author in 1938. And she was bold. She was a very bold woman for her day. But she was very well educated. Her husband was in the Navy. She passed away at the ripe old age of 103. Last year, I think it was. And I when I see things like this, I know that she was a religious woman. You know, I may be, I may not be. I just believe that our youth need some guidance. They need a moral guidance, a compass, and it's being taken away from them. So let's see. The story of Commonwealth College in Arkansas is a picture of the most debasing practice of communist activities. Oh, Arkansas, eh? In the United States of America. This school, founded by money given by communists, has a record that equals the tale of Sodom and Gomorrah. The sworn statements of peace officers, residents in close proximity to the school, and the statements of some of the students make up the most sordid story that has ever been written of happenings in these days of advanced civilization. 1936. Atheism, communism, and free love were not only taught in the unholy atmosphere of this college, but sad to relate, do we know anybody who lives in Arkansas? Okay, where was I? I'm getting comfortable reading this one. Atheism, communism, and free love were not only taught in the unholy atmosphere of this college, but sad to relate, under the guidance of the teachers, all those ungodly teachings were practiced. In one instance, a boy of 14 years was inducted into the pagan rites that were part of the curriculum, and according to the sworn testimony of his sister, boasted of a disbelief in God, 14 years old, which he had absorbed during his stay at this college. Disrespect for America and the substitution of the red flag of Russia for our own emblem as an object of respect were also strongly stressed. Thoroughly communistic, the school continues, supported by contributions from the Red Army. And despite this record of filth, we find the Educational Division of the Federal Emergency Relief Administration providing scholarships for students to attend such a sink of iniquity. I am sure the principal weapons used by the communists to achieve their ambition of destroying our form of government and of subjecting us to the Soviet government of Russia, or metacity and dissension. Yes, I see dissension big time here in our country. Lenin, and the father of communism, said, "It is not the people who prepare revolutions." You want to bet? One has to prepare the people for revolt. That's what they're doing. That's what they have been doing. They have been preparing our youth for a revolt. Okay, so what's happening today in our world? Watch TV, watch all the news stations, read the articles on the internet. It's a total revolt and a division of our country, of the people. Our children have no respect for their parents. Parents have no respect for their children, or themselves, or their partners. There are no boundaries in schools between students and educators. Politicians, leaders have no boundaries. No one's respecting anyone, and we're constantly fighting. So while we're all fighting, all this is passing over our heads. We're losing our country, people. We have to wake up. I am sure the principal weapons used by the communists to achieve their ambition of destroying our form of government and subjecting us to the Soviet government of Russia are metacity and dissension. Yes, I mentioned dissension. Lenin, the father of communism, said, "It is not the people who prepare revolutions. One has to prepare the people for revolt." So who are these people that we know now are preparing our children, our youth today? This Antifa, the crazy movements out there that are just destroying our kids. They're allowing them. They're paying them. They're paying them to travel around the country and the world to revolt. Revolt about decency. Revolt about having order. Revolt against family and God. It is the people who prepare revolutions. One has to prepare. Right. So yeah, I gotta shut this off for a minute because my daughter's doing her hair. Had to take a little breaky there. Okay, so let's see, where was I? Oh God, it's noisy outside. So, anyways, let's see. One has to prepare. Oh, yeah, I got that. And we, the communists, can secure communism in one country only by introducing it in all countries. We can introduce it in other countries only to the degree that we can promote dissension. And Lenin said, "We Bolsheviks," whatever, I don't know, just know that I have a lisp, "are going to bring the social revolution as much to America as to Europe. It is coming systematically, step by step. The struggle will be long, cruel, and sanguinary. What matters the loss of 90% by executions if 10% of communists remain to carry on the revolution? Bolshevism is not a seminary for young ladies. All children should be present at the executions and rejoice at the death of the enemies of the proletariat." Can you imagine? God. Speaking of religion, Stalin said, "By May 1st, 1937, there should not be one single church left within the borders of Soviet Russia, and the idea of God will have been banished from the Soviet Union as a remnant of the Middle Ages." Can you imagine? "Which has been used for the purpose of oppressing the working classes." As Lenachevsky, speaking of Christians, said, "We hate Christians. The best among them must be looked upon as our very worst enemies. They preach love and mercy to one's neighbor. What we intend having is hatred. We must learn how to hate, for only at this price can we conquer the world." This is horrible. I'm going to read that again. I can't believe what I'm reading, but because this is the thoughts and minds of people that once lived. 1936. 1937. This is what they wanted by then. And Luna, of all his name, yeah, he was a lunatic. And Lunacharsky, speaking of Christians, said, "We hate Christians. The best among them must be looked upon as our very worst enemies. They preach love and mercy to one's neighbor. What we intend having is hatred. We must learn how to hate, for only at this price can we conquer the world. We have made an end of the kings of the world. Let us now make an end of the kings of the clouds. Our religions are poison. They put the mind to sleep and destroy it. They kill both willpower and conscience. War to the knife must be declared against all religions. Our task is the destruction of all religion and all morality." Imagine that. "There is nothing at which they will hesitate. Thus we see communists mixing into all activities of the day. For instance, the so-called pacifist movements. At least 98% of these peace movements are fostered by the communists, and particularly the peace movements arising in schools and colleges. This interest is pacifism, is an index to the manner in which dissension is used by these enemies of America. Imagine, if you can, the sincerity of the communists who are committed to a program of force and violence to achieve their ends, engaged in any sincere effort for peace. Proof of their belief in the practice of violence is contained in this utterance of Lenin. The scientific concept, dictatorship, means nothing more or less than power which directly rests in violence, which is not limited by any law or absolute rules. Dictatorships means unlimited power resting on violence and not on law. When asked the communist idea of morals, Lenin replied, "That is moral which helps communism." Many sincere advocates of world peace are being fooled into joining communist or un-American organizations. The principal offenders are the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Yes, we have motorcycles. I can't believe what I'm reading, because it's like a textbook, a plan that they're following out today. Many sincere advocates of world peace are being fooled into joining communist or un-American organizations. The principal offenders are the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom and the Students' League for Industrial Democracy, now known as the American Students' League. Everywhere in our everyday life, in churches and schools and colleges, in peace movements and labor organizations, we find this beast, communism. No angles are overlooked. The doctrine of atheism and un-Americanism has permeated every nook and corner. In my opinion, we are now facing a crisis in world affairs because of only one fact. So-called civilization for the past 100 years, their past 100 years, okay, so they're going from 1836 to 1936, drifting away from God. Because God is passing out of the world, we are facing a new slavery. This new slavery not only takes possession of the body, the labor, and the property of man, but also of his soul. This new slavery not only seizes what is human in man, but also what is divine. I mean socialist, atheistic state. When I speak of a new slavery, I mean the socialist, atheistic state when I speak of a new slavery. The atheistic state is always a slave state because it deprives its citizens of souls as well as all economic freedom. This brings us to another contradictory argument advanced by the communists. The condemnation of capitalism by communism is absolutely unjust. Communism says that capitalism concentrates wealth in the hands of a few. Logically, the communistic argument against capitalism could be termed a mad doctrine because it says the wealth should be concentrated in the hands of the state, thus creating a capitalistic state. Accordingly, in summing up all the arguments advanced by the communists, we find that it is a purely materialistic philosophy. The new social order and the new social order, the new world order. The new social order and the new conception of man would make of human beings but logs to be thrown on a bonfire to keep ablaze the material things of the universe. Man's life becomes a pilgrimage to the factory. His prayers are diverted from God to the state. This effort has already been achieved in Russia, where man has been fashioned into a tool. Man and animal in Mexico. All right, now who's riding around? In Mexico, man is being fashioned into an animal, in such a fashion, becoming but cogs in a machine, grinding out pigsty morality. We who have the true concept of man realize that he is more than an automation. His natural heritage is a home here on earth, where he can develop a school in which truth and beauty can be communicated. a church in which he can converse with God. Our problem is to decide which is to take precedence, the human right or the economic right. Does the human right yield to the economic right to dispossess him and to turn everything over to the socialist state? Does the economic right permit these revolutionists to render unto Caesar even the things that are God's? This atheistic philosophy of communism is attempting to shatter the mold in which God made man, a logical sequence of the doctrines of Marx and Engels. The cry of the communists is down. Down with God. Down with the flag of America. Down with the wealthy. Down with the church. Our answer as Catholic Americans should be up from class hatred, up from being a tool or an animal, up with the flag of America, up from the earth, up beyond the stars, up to God for whom we were made. Catholicity has ever been the staunch defender of authority, when kept within due and just bounds. But when any power seeks to exercise its authority unjustly, as when the state, for example, sets itself up as the absolute and ultimate, the church turns to state and says, no, the people do not exist for the state, you exist for them. It is most refreshing to quote Dr. Nicholas Murray Butler on the subject of education without religion. In an address last year, he pictured the present deplorable condition of our modern state-controlled system of education without religion. He exposed the inherent injustice of the system, which deprives the child of a fundamental right, and pointed out the inevitable and disastrous results which shall accrue from the system. In his address, Dr. Butler said, in part, "From the viewpoint of sound educational principle, this is a serious state of affairs, since the religious inheritance of the race is an essential part of the history of that civilization toward a knowledge of which it is the chief business of education to lead youth from generation to generation. One need not himself be religious or indeed have any concern for religion to grasp the fact that religion has had a very large, often a predominant, influence in shaping our contemporary civilization, and in laying the foundations of our present-day social, economic, and political institutions. During the half-century just past, this condition has changed entirely, and religious knowledge, together with religious interest, is passing all too rapidly out of the educational process. The primary and responsible influences in the religious education of children should, of course, be the family and the church. The family, unhappily, has largely broken down as a shaping and directing educational force and influence, while the church, as represented by the Protestant churches at least, despite various statistical statements, is falling farther and farther behind, year by year, in the effectiveness of its religious instruction. So far as tax-supported schools are concerned, an odd situation has been permitted to arise. The separation of church and state is fundamental in our American political order. But so far as religious instruction is concerned, this principle has been so far departed from as to put the whole force and influence of the tax-supported school on the side of one element of the population, namely that which is pagan and believes in no religion whatsoever. In the university, the trained student is led, if he so pleases, to study various religions in scholarly fashion: Christianity, Mohammedanism, Judaism, Brahmanism, Confucianism, or any other. The school child, however, is entitled to receive and should receive that particular form of religious instruction and training which his parents and natural guardians hold dear. This cannot be done if the program of the tax-supported schools is arranged on the theory that religion is to be excluded from the educational process, or treated merely incidentally as an element in home life. The government's indifference to religion must not be allowed to become opposition to religion. In these days of confused thinking, the fresh sincerity of Dr. Butler's well-pondered words come as a refreshing breath of fresh air. America has always listened with high respect to the pronouncements of this eminent scholar, whose views carry the stamp of vision and clear-sightedness. We sincerely hope that his latest utterance will have a far-reaching effect in educational circles, and so help to ensure a religious culture for America. One horrible example of college-preaching Russian communism, the details of which even outrival the accounts of Sodom and Gomorrah, is Commonwealth College in Arkansas. On the advisory committee of 14, there are such well-recognized communists as Oscar Emeringer, Karl Hessler, Scott Nearing, and Lucien Koch. I haven't time to discuss this institution, but it receives a large contribution from FERA funds, and is one of the principal beneficiaries of the so-called Garland Fund. It has taught and practiced communism, nudism, and free love. In the peace drive recently advocated among colleges, the Right Honorable George Lansbury was rushed to the forefront, and his record is somewhat as follows. An English socialist member of the Independent Labour Party in Parliament, served 2 prison terms, a vice president of the Workers' International Relief, and a member of the National Council for Prevention of War in England. Socialism and communism, as taught in our universities, bred but one attitude toward law, toward our existing government, and toward Christian civilization itself, a contemptuous and defiant and a violently rebellious attitude. In practically every institution you will find the Antichrist, anti-God, anti-Bible, and anti-moral professor. These are the shock troops that wear down the home-taught morals. He may not be labeled as such and seldom appears in his true colors, but like every seductive siren, he masquerades as an intellectual, enlightened man or woman, a scientific thinker who tolerates the ignorance of our poor deluded parents and the benighted barbarians who wrote the Bible. Bertrand Russell, the famous English author in What Can a Free Man Worship?, asserts a free man, a civilized and enlightened free man, can worship nothing, unless it is omnipotent matter rolling on its relentless way. In a recent book on education in the modern world, Russell quotes at considerable length from both Pickens and Lenin. In discussing Pickens, he says, "In the communist state, the school is to be, quite frankly, an instrument of class domination in the hands of the proletariat. And there is to be no moral teaching other than what is useful to the workers in the class struggle." Lenin is quoted as saying, "We deny any kind of morality which is taken from the non-human and non-class conception, and regard such morality as a fraud and a deception, which blocks the minds of workers and peasants in the interests of landowners and capitalists. We say that our morality is entirely subservient to the interests of the class struggle of the proletariat." I'm going to stop here. I'm going to put this together and I'll do another section on this. I've got a few more pages to read, but I think people understand what we are seeing today that's happened in our world. I mean, the President of the United States, he won the election in 2016, okay? His inauguration in 2017. He's been under attack from all sides since he was sworn in. Even before that. They laughed that he was even considering running. They have attacked his family any way they possibly can, mocking him. And he's trying to do his best to bring this country back. It has been totally torn apart. Its people divided, fighting against one another, riots in the street. We haven't seen this in decades. We've been overthrown. And this Islamic barbarian. What do you want? Hi. I'm doing something educational. Go away. In conclusion to what I've been witnessing, in today's world, in the United States and around the world, we're in so much danger of losing our identity. I mean, our youth is just a shallow shell. Our youth is just a hollow shell. There's no substance there anymore. We've lost them. They're rioting in the streets. They don't even know what they're rioting for. It's just insane. I just hope everybody just gathers themselves and start to realize that violence is not the way to run this country or the world. What we've been witnessing with these extremists that are beheading people, and then they're mocked in this country as I just can't. This whole world is just in total danger of total destruction. It's moral destruction. We have no accountability anymore. You see it every day. Our youth are yet just but a hollow shell of themselves. They have no moral compass. They don't know what they want to do. Most of them haven't worked. They don't know how to work. They don't know how to build things. They don't know how to think. All they know how to do is use their phones. We've got to stop. We have to stop and think about what we're doing with our kids. Where is this all going? What's the objective? I don't see anything good happening in the future if we keep on this course. And President Trump is trying to guide us in a better direction and straighten out where we have lost our way. I just wish people would support him and stop tearing him down. We have too much business to continue on with. We have to protect ourselves. Yes, sometimes things call for walls, boundaries. We call setting boundaries. Support your president. He needs you. You need him. We still have Obama out there. Hey, a lot of people like him. I always wanted to like him, but I didn't like what he did to our country. He divided us. I'm not even going to go back to him. But we need a president, and we have one, finally, that is going to do something good for this country and the world. He's trying to bring us all together. Why wouldn't you support that? What's wrong with trying to bring everyone together? Division is wrong. Support President Trump. Help him where you can. Start to think about what's happening with your youth and all this destruction and division. Take your family, sit them down in your home, have a good talk and say, what do you want to do with yourself? Where do you want to see this country, or where do you want to see yourself in the next decade? Half of our kids don't have a trade. They don't know what they're going to do. I mean, we've got groups out there running around in the streets, burning cars, police cars. They have no respect for authority. The very people that if you ever needed someone to come help you, those would be the people that would come. They're even afraid of the citizens. People are shooting people, killing people, murdering. We're seeing videos of children beating up other children for the laughs. What's happened to everybody? Where has everybody been? Parents aren't helping children. They're worse than their children. Let's get together and try and make something better out of this country. Stand up for yourselves, but don't break windows and burn down houses and riot in the streets. Talk to one another. Stop screaming at one another. Nothing is ever accomplished when you're screaming or causing violence in the streets or in your homes. Stop and think. What's rational? What will bring about peace? Let's work together. We all want to be happy. We all want to have our comfortable homes and love our family. You can be what you want, but just don't be violent and stop this hate. The agenda now is to bring about world peace and stability. If we don't have peace, stability in our homes, you won't have it in the world. We all have to focus on peace, stability, consistency, helping one another out. Look at the big picture here. This last election was a total chaos. Total chaos. Riots in the street. For what? For what? So someone lost an election, and they're perpetuating this to this day. This deep state. And it is. It's a deep state. There's a dark. There is a dark world, underworld, that we have to conquer. We have to rid this country of that underworld that's causing so much hate and division in this country and around the world. Join me in trying to find our own peace. We've got to start to do something. We cannot go on this course any longer. Look ahead. Take two pictures. On the left, what direction do you see yourselves going in? What is the agenda there? What is there to accomplish? What are all your requests? What are your needs? To the right, what is your agenda? We have to take both sides and put them together and think what is best for the country and for all. Let's just stop this nonsense of violence and division, revolt. We have to work together to bring this country to, back on its feet. I mean, we're really having a this is really a bad time. When we see that our president isn't respected, the highest position in our country is disrespected, the commander in chief. It's sad. I'm sad for our country. Let's all pull together and support our president and try and get ourselves back on our feet. And if anybody doesn't understand the infrastructure thing, our country is older. Its infrastructure is falling apart. Things don't last, forever. Our roads, our bridges, our highways, our rivers, our canals, transportation systems, your gas lines, your water lines, all those things become outdated. I mean, we have to replace and repair these things. They're old. It's time. And always, I don't know what to say, but, all right, so I'll have another talk with you at some other time. I've got a headache from talking so long. I don't know what to do, but I'm just saying, please, everybody, just stop and think about what you say and do. We all live on this one little planet, and we're not going anywhere. Trust me, we're not going anywhere. We're not going to be colonizing Mars. I mean, it's a wonderful thought. But we have a problem down here on this planet, this wonderful, beautiful planet, and we have to fix it because we need it, and it needs us. It's hurting too. So let's all work together and find a solution that we can all agree upon and support your president. President Trump is trying to really, really help this country. He didn't have to run for president. He didn't have to leave his life, but he did. He did it for you. He saw something wrong, and he wanted to right it. He wanted to bring it back. What's wrong with that? He's a good man. All right. Thank you for listening to me. I'm Sophia Yates. I'm long-winded. Yes, I understand. I hope I captured your attention. Please talk to your family and your friends. Don't fight. Peace, love. Over and out.